Michael opened his mouth. No sound came. Just pain. Just silence. July 8th, 1968. 6:47 p.m. Apollo Theater, Harlem, New York. The Jackson 5 were scheduled to perform at 8 p.m. Apollo Amateur Night. This was their audition for Motown scouts in the audience. Everything depended on tonight. Backstage, 10-year-old Michael tried to warm up his voice. His throat felt like broken glass. "Dad," Michael whispered, "something's wrong." Joe Jackson's face went hard. "What do you mean, wrong?" I can't sing. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. 6:52 p.m. Joe called the theater's medical consultant, Dr. Raymond Cooper, 58, had treated performers at the Apollo for 20 years. He examined Michael's throat with a laryngoscope. What he saw made him go quiet. The family crowded around. Joe, Catherine, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon. "Mr. Jackson, your son's vocal cords are severely inflamed. Acute laryngitis, possibly nodules forming." "What does that mean?" Joe asked. "It means if he sings tonight, if he pushes those damaged cords, he could lose his voice. Permanently." The room went silent. Michael didn't fully grasp permanently. But he understood. The doctor was saying he might never sing again. He understood. This was his fault for singing too much during rehearsals. He understood. He'd ruined everything. Joe's face showed calculation, not concern. This performance determined whether Motown signed him. Without Michael's voice, they had nothing. Dr. Cooper continued. "The boy needs complete vocal rest. Minimum 2 weeks. No talking. Absolutely no singing. If he performs tonight, the damage could become permanent. He's 10 years old. His vocal instrument is still developing." Catherine Jackson said immediately, "Then we cancel. We'll reschedule." "We can't cancel," Joe said. "Joe, you heard the doctor." "We can't cancel." Joe's voice was harder now. "The Motown scouts are here tonight. They won't come back." The stakes were brutal. Amateur night at the Apollo was live. 2,000 people in the audience. Cancel now meant public humiliation. Motown opportunity gone. Perform meant Michael might lose his voice forever. Joe was doing the math. Michael's voice versus the family's future. His health. Catherine's voice rose. "Joe, he's 10 years old. His health is more important than..." "His health? You think we can afford a doctor if we're not making money? You think we eat if Motown doesn't sign us?" Joe paused. "Michael has a gift. Gifts are meant to be used. That's what they're for." Dr. Cooper intervened. "Mr. Jackson, I need to be very clear. If your son sings tonight with his vocal cords in this condition, you're not using his gift. You're destroying it." Joe didn't look at the doctor. He looked at Michael. "Michael, can you do this? Can you perform tonight?" And here's where Michael learned the lesson that would destroy his romantic life. At 10 years old, he understood. The people who love you will ask you to hurt yourself for them. And if you love them back, you say yes. This moment would echo for 40 years. In 1984, when Diana Ross would hint at romantic interest but refused to commit publicly, Michael would accept the crumbs. Because at 10, he learned. Love means taking what little they're willing to give while destroying yourself. In 1994, Lisa Marie Presley would ask him to choose between his needs and hers. He'd choose hers. Because at 10, he learned that's what love requires. Throughout his life, Michael would attract people who took and took. Because at 10, he learned his value lay in what he could give, even if it destroyed him. But that was decades away. Right now, it was 7:15 p.m., and Catherine pulled Michael aside. "Baby, listen to me. You don't have to do this." But Daddy said, "I don't care what your father said. You're my son. Your voice is precious. If you lose it, no amount of money is worth that." But what about the family? What about Motown? Catherine was crying. The family will survive. But if you damage your voice permanently, can you survive that? Michael didn't answer because he didn't know. Jermaine spoke up. "If you can't sing, I'll take lead. I can do it." Michael felt relief. Jermaine could save the performance. Then Joe. "Jermaine, you're good, but you're not what the scouts came to see." They came from Michael. The message landed. Only Michael's destroyed voice was valuable enough. Jackie whispered to Michael, "You don't have to be the hero." But Michael had learned from Joe. Yes, he did. 7:35 p.m. 25 minutes until showtime. Michael stood in front of a mirror looking at his reflection. If I don't sing, the family suffers. If I do sing, I might lose my voice forever. But maybe the doctor is wrong. Maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe I'm strong enough. What Michael didn't understand at 10, he wasn't weighing his health against the family's success. He was weighing his worth as a person. If he couldn't sing, what was he? If he wasn't useful, was he loved? 7:42 p.m. Joe returned to the dressing room. "Michael, it's time to decide." Catherine stood behind Joe, tears streaming, silently begging Michael to say no. Michael looked at his mother, then at his father. "I'll do it," Michael said. "I'll sing." Catherine closed her eyes. Dr. Cooper shook his head. Joe Jackson nodded, satisfied. "That's my son. That's a Jackson." Joe's relief wasn't about Michael's bravery. It was about Michael's obedience. Joe had trained his son perfectly. When asked to destroy himself for the family, Michael said yes. And Joe called this love. 7:55 p.m. 5 minutes to curtain. The Jackson 5 waited in the wings. Michael could feel his throat swelling. Every swallow was agony. Dr. Cooper had given him a numbing spray. Temporary relief, but it masked the damage he was about to do. This was the Apollo Theater, where Ella Fitzgerald was discovered, where James Brown became a legend. Amateur night was notoriously brutal. If the crowd didn't like you, they booed you off stage. 2,000 people waiting. Motown scouts in the VIP section. Everything riding on the next 15 minutes. Michael's brothers surrounded him in silent support. They knew what he was sacrificing. They knew they couldn't stop it. 8 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, from Gary, Indiana, the Jackson 5. Michael stepped into the spotlight. The first song, an upbeat Motown cover. Michael opened his mouth to sing the first note. Pain exploded through his throat, but sound came out. Raspy, strained, but sound. The audience didn't know anything was wrong. To them, Michael sounded passionate, raw, emotional. They didn't know he was singing through damaged vocal cords. They didn't know every note was tearing tissue. His throat was on fire. He could taste blood. The numbing spray was wearing off, but he kept singing. Because at 10 years old, he'd learned this is what love costs. Joe Jackson watched from stage left. Michael was struggling, but the crowd was into it. The Motown scouts were leaning forward. It was working. Joe's gamble was paying off. Catherine Jackson watched from stage right. She could see her son was in pain. She could see him pushing past limits that would damage him. And she couldn't stop it. Song number 3, the ballad that required vocal control. This was Michael's showcase moment. The song that showed off his range. The first verse went okay. Then the chorus. Michael reached for a high note. His voice cracked. Badly. The Apollo crowd reacted. A few boos started. Someone yelled, "Get off the stage." The Jackson brothers panicked. If they got booed off at the Apollo, their career was over. Michael had a choice. Stop singing, protect his voice, accept failure, or push harder, risk permanent damage. Try to save the performance. At 10 years old, Michael made the choice that would define his romantic life. He pushed harder. Michael closed his eyes and sang through the pain. Something happened. The crack in his voice, the damage, the strain, the sacrifice, it became emotion. The audience stopped booing, because what they were hearing wasn't technical perfection. It was a 10-year-old boy literally breaking himself for them. It was vulnerability, pain, and devotion made audible. Michael hit the final high note. His voice shattered on it, but the emotion landed. The crowd erupted. Standing ovation. Backstage, Dr. Cooper watched, horrified. That boy just destroyed his vocal cords. But no one was listening, because the crowd was going wild. The Motown scouts stood up, applauding. They'd seen what they came for. Not perfect technique, but star quality, raw emotion, sacrifice. Michael finished the song, took a bow. The pain was so intense, he could barely stand. But he was smiling because he did it. He saved the family. He proved his worth. What Michael didn't understand yet, he just learned the most toxic lesson about love, that it requires self-destruction. That pain proves devotion, that your value lies in what you're willing to destroy for others. Backstage, immediately after the performance, Motown scouts approached Joe Jackson. "We want to sign them. That kid is incredible." Joe, triumphant, "I told you, my boys are special." Catherine found Michael in the dressing room, brought him water. His voice was gone now. "Completely," he mouthed. "Did we get signed?" Catherine nodded, crying. Michael smiled. It was worth it. Dr. Cooper's final examination was grim. "Mr. Jackson, your son needs to see a specialist. The damage to his vocal cords is significant, but he can still sing, right?" Joe asked. "Eventually, with treatment and rest. But you need to understand, tonight probably shortened his vocal career by years, possibly decades." Joe waved this away. "He's 10. He's got time." The truth no one wanted to hear. Michael's voice would recover, but the psychological damage was permanent. Tonight, he learned love means destroying yourself, and that lesson would echo for 40 years. In 1981, Michael's relationship with Tatum O'Neal failed. She wanted a public relationship, normal dating. Michael couldn't give it. His time, energy, health all belonged to the music. She asked, "Do you even want a relationship or just the idea of one?" He didn't know how to answer, because at 10, he learned. Your wants don't matter, only what you can give. In 1984 to 1985, the pattern with Diana Ross repeated. Diana showed interest, then pulled away when it got real. Michael accepted this. Waiting, hoping, destroyed himself emotionally. Because at 10, he learned. Love means enduring pain to prove devotion. In 1994, the marriage to Lisa Marie Presley failed. She asked him to choose, her needs or his career demands. He couldn't choose her. Because at 10, he learned. You sacrifice yourself for others, not the reverse. Throughout his life, Michael gave and gave in relationships until there was nothing left. He attracted people who took because he was trained to give. He equated love with sacrifice, pain with proof of caring. And it all traced back to July 8, 1968, when he was 10 years old and sang through damaged vocal cords because that's what his father said love required. July 8, 1968, 11:30 p.m., hospital examination room. A vocal specialist examined Michael's throat. "He'll heal," the specialist said. "His youth is in his favor." But what? Catherine asked. But whoever allowed him to perform in this condition, whoever told a 10-year-old child to sing through acute laryngitis, that person taught him his voice is expendable. His health is expendable. He himself is expendable. The doctor looked at Joe Jackson. "Mr. Jackson, you won tonight. You got your Motown contract. But you need to understand what you taught your son." "I taught him to be strong," Joe said. "No," the doctor said quietly. "You taught him that being loved means being used. And that's a lesson he'll carry for the rest of his life." Catherine realized the truth. Tonight wasn't about Michael's strength. It was about his conditioning. Joe trained him to destroy himself on command and called it family loyalty. But it was too late. The contract was signed. The pattern was established. Michael learned his value at 10 years old. Conditional, based on utility, requiring self-sacrifice. In 2001, Michael Jackson, age 43, sat in therapy. "When did you first learn to ignore your own needs?" the therapist asked. Michael's voice was quiet. "I was 10 years old. I had laryngitis. A doctor said if I sang, I might lose my voice forever." "And you sang anyway?" "My father said the family needed me to." "What did your mother say?" "She said I didn't have to, that I could say no." "But you didn't say no." Michael shook his head. "Because if I said no, I wasn't loving my family enough. I wasn't enough." Pause. "And in your romantic relationships?" Michael, tears in his eyes. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm enough by giving everything. My time, my health, my privacy, myself. And it's never enough because I learned at 10 years old. The more you destroy yourself, the more you prove you care. July 8th, 1968. Hospital room. 10-year-old Michael sat with his throat bandaged, unable to speak. Catherine stroked his hair. Joe was on the phone in the hallway, discussing contract details. Michael didn't know that tonight would echo for 40 years. He didn't know he just learned the most toxic definition of love imaginable. He just knew. He did what was asked of him. He destroyed himself when told to, and everyone called him brave. Michael looked at his reflection in the hospital room mirror. His throat was bandaged. His voice was gone. But the Motown contract was signed. He was valuable. He was loved, wasn't he? Michael Jackson, age 10, told he'd never sing if he performed. What happened next shocked everyone. He sang anyway, and in doing so, he learned that love means destroying yourself when asked. That lesson would cost him every real relationship he'd ever try to have, because at 10 years old, Michael Jackson learned, your pain proves your devotion. Your sacrifice proves your worth. And if you say no to self-destruction, you're saying no to love. Everyone called him brave, but he wasn't brave. He was just a child who didn't know he could say no. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.